Just take a second here and it'll show. I'll tell you as soon as people come on, then I'll
Yeah,
start talking.
sounds great,
And you
man.
can edit all this out anyway.
Yeah.
My my people don't care in the group. They
I love it.
yeah. I'm just gonna look on
Yeah.
in the group to make sure that it's playing live in there. Okay, perfect. It is in there. So to any and everybody who is watching this or paying attention, I'm really excited because Jeff is somebody who reached out to me. When was that? A few months ago?
Yeah, I want to say it was like maybe like early January, early mid-January.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, he reached out to me, and he has a podcast called ONEconsciousness, as you can see below, and I'll put better links in all this so that people can find it. And for those who've been paying attention to my work and the things that I express that are expressed through me as a result of me getting out of my own way, I work and talk to a lot of people, and Jeff and I had this incredible flow together. It was like there, like a right. There's certain bands where you just everybody has this chemistry, and it comes together, and it makes music that is so profound and so much more powerful than like a single virtuoso, right? And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
we kind of had that, like we had that kind of chemistry going, and it's kind of indicative of how many of us are feeling the direction of the world could be headed. Because if we stop thinking we're so great as individuals, which we are from a greater perspective, but if we start to recognize the greatness in others from the part of ourself that's in tune with that, then we encourage that greatness in others. And suddenly we're all working together. We're bringing out the best in one another. We're not competing with each other. And you and I did that. We had that last conversation was so exciting, and so anyway, we're back, and this is for his actual podcast, so it's not a live show that he does, but we figured, you know what, we'll stream it live in this group because people love it. So you all are getting a pre-live watch of his podcast. So that's what this is. Jeff, thank you. I'm going to hand it over to you, and then we're just going to go with the flow.
Love it, love it, Seth. Thank you so much. I love your description of and I really did. I felt like when we talked that last time that it almost felt like I know some people use that phrase "soul family," but it definitely felt like you and I have or there's that kind of connection. And I was so incredibly moved by what you had shared. And I was going to tell you, not only myself, but I mean, I had so many people that commented just on everything that you shared, and it moved people. And so that's why because of that connection and because of the fact I felt like this was a wonderful opportunity. And that's why I reached out again to really continue the conversation. What's interesting is this doesn't happen hardly ever for me. I don't, I, maybe one other time I'm thinking in the 4 years that I've done this. And so to me, I really honor you and what you shared about your journey that I feel like there's so much more to hear from you. Yeah.
Oh, I appreciate that. Yeah, that's wow, 4 years. But you know what? See, it's like the Rogers Bannister in the 4 Minute Mile. Like once it starts happening, right, it has the potential to keep happening, and that's what we're trying to do here. Like the cutting edge of the new frontier of perceptive awareness in dialogue. Right, we're essentially trying to give voice and word and rationale and meaning to something that is infinite and expansive and beyond human comprehension. So it's an interesting little dilemma that we're in here, a beautiful one, an amazing one. So thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And actually, I love what you just said because I was going to say, I've noticed that in this digital world, there seems to be this, people talk about this very short attention span, but I really get the sense that these kind of conversations almost feel like, in some ways, is it like an ancient art that maybe somehow in this digital world, we've forgotten about I guess what you call the power of sacred conversations.
Mm, wow. Yeah.
Yeah. Just being here together.
That just by you saying that, Kay, like this is the issue, like attention span, and it was kind of like we were talking about before we were talking before the nature of addiction, right? People think about addiction and they think, oh, it's drugs, it's alcohol, it's habits, it's this, it's that. But the real addiction is so subtle to the degree that it's been normalized. And essentially, it has to do with attention, right? People have this attention span that is focused on everything but what will really bring them the healing, the wellness, the wholeness, the expansive embodiment that so many people talk about in this. So this is really what the shifting out of it is like. We allow ourselves to be distracted or triggered or whatever by a million different things that are external to us, while there's this whole rich, unexplored internal world that if we start just attuning our attention and bringing our attention to it, then we start finding that it's easier to keep giving more and more attention to it. And that turns into something like eventually you start shedding these old habits, right? You're not distracted as easily. Your attention gets more focused while it's expanding at the same time. And
Yeah, yeah,
that's, like for a species that has essentially been socially engineered and conditioned to be consumers of things that corporations make, of information, right? Like everybody consumes everything from the outside in. We all think that, oh, somebody or something has what we're looking for, oblivious to the recognition that in us is what we are actually looking for, and that our five senses, our human senses that everybody's addicted to, right, thinking that that's the most important, is actually just a secondary expression of a much more profound primary expression of a sense that's called intuition. So
yeah,
our
yeah.
extrasensory perception is actually just our intuition. And when we go inside, when we create that internal alignment between the heart and brain, and we keep doing it, then suddenly our intuition starts to come online. And if we keep focusing on it long enough, it starts to override all of these human senses that we're all so addicted to focusing on.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm wondering too. Are we maybe finding the limits of how much we can get external to us, or how much happiness and well-being that we can find outside of us? I don't know if that's a fair question or.
Well, I mean, like, I mean, who is happy, right? Like everybody, I know so many people that have so many things, and they're not happy.
Oh
You know,
yeah.
and but also people are not happy, and look at the cost that it comes at.
Oh man. Yeah.
I mean, at what point do we just step back, take a breather, and be totally freaking honest with ourselves and say, this is crazy. Like this way of life that we think we have to live. I gotta work. I gotta make money. I gotta do this. I gotta do that. Like, at what point do you say, like, okay, this is insane? This not only is it not bringing happiness, but we are leaving a wake of destruction in our path of endlessly consuming things that bring us a brief, temporary blip of pleasure, but then that pleasure wears off and we want more. We're the addict. We want more. We just keep doing that. And everybody does it. And it's been happening so much for so long that it's become normalized. People don't even think of addiction as this convergent focus of only focusing on what is right in front of you based upon what other people have taught us is important. That's the addiction. We are addicted to believing that Seth is all there is, and Seth's wants and needs in his human form is the most important thing there is. Everybody believes that about themselves. But who we are is about as significant as a single grain of sand on all the beaches of the world compared to what we are. And until we start to shift our focus to what we are, then we will always be in this addictive loop, chasing something, never, having brief moments of like, oh, and then, oh, I want more. And no, like, take a breather, a long one, an infinite one, because the universe is actually breathing you and me, and like we're not doing this, we're just a part of it.
Yeah, yeah. That's what I was going to say. To me, it's like, and I get those fleeting glimpses of that. Like, for instance, having these kind of conversations where at some point it feels like there is no Seth, there is no Jeff. We're actually just here, and but I realize too, and I honor the fact that you're here open to doing that, because I know ultimately you have to have at least two or more people, now in terms of conversationally speaking, but I know, clearly we have a lot of options to do that on our own. And I love how you talk about that. Like, for instance, when you speak about, being in touch with the beating of your heart and that life force that's within us. And so we get these, and I wonder sometimes too, is it possible, are we addicted to needing to have other people around us? I don't know if that's what part of this is as well, is needing, addicted to attention and, having people around us to kind of keep this whole thing going.
When I was very young, I remember feeling very clearly within me. My intuition hadn't been muddied up, you could say. The waters hadn't been clouded or poisoned or toxified yet. And I remember very clearly being aware that if I can go into the heart of complete aloneness and feel totally satisfied with that feeling, then there isn't really going to be much standing in the way of me like being the best version of myself. And I knew this as a kid, and you're absolutely right. I mean, people feel like they need attention. They feel like they need all these things, and a lot of this comes from this wounding, this childhood wounding, and the inability to release trauma, because it is the imaginative capability that, when we are in alignment with it, actually is what makes us feel like we're not alone. When we have a rich internal world of imagination and this, because it's accompanied by this feeling and this knowing and this intuition that anything and everything is possible. So the more we attune ourselves to that ultimate greater reality that is pulsing through us, the less we feel like we need anybody, giving us recognition or anything like that. And, you know, so
Yeah,
it's funny.
yeah.
I wrote a quote, and it's funny. I said a little bit of it, but I said it in a different way earlier. But I wrote a quote that said, let me see if I can remember it off the top of my head here. I don't remember things very well. I just speak off the cuff. But the quote said something like, um, "To be known by every single person on the planet is as significant as a single grain of sand in all the beaches of the world, compared to the fame." Okay, no, no, sorry. Let me re-say again. The fame one's ego would get were it to be known by every single person on the planet is as significant as a single grain of sand on all the beaches of the world, compared to the fame that one's soul would get were it to become integrated into the entire living universe. The latter
Wow.
is the type of
Yeah.
fame that I see. So that a couple weeks ago, someone was like, "Oh, okay, what? They don't know me. They don't know anything about me." And they're like, "This guy loves the sound of his own voice, and he used to be an addict, and I've seen guys like this. They're all hopped up on spirituality, and he was just like saying all this stuff, and he doesn't know me, So, but that's essentially it. Like this idea of seeking to be known, or it's short-lived, it's meaningless compared to what happens when this energy that is animating our being starts to become integrated back into where it comes from to begin with. And if we aren't proactive in the way we conduct our thoughts, behaviors, actions, beliefs, all the things that, if we're not taking responsibility for what we are, then who we are gets lost in this endless maze of pain and suffering and trauma and drama and all this stuff. And I think it's pretty clear to everyone that that doesn't work, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It doesn't feel like it does. That's for sure. Yeah.
And you could even take it further and say it's not that it didn't work. It worked great to get us to this point now where more and more of us are starting to realize, like, okay, there's something greater than that. Like, that way of being isn't bringing the type of fulfillment that we know is possible and that we're capable of. And so that means something new. And a lot of people are like, "Ooh, put on the brakes. I don't want to do anything new. I just want to be who I am and do what I've always done," because to change means to confront all of these beliefs, these thoughts, these ideas, these feelings that were really never ours to begin with anyway. So,
Man, yeah, that really resonates. It really does. It really does. And I was going to say, as someone who, when I started this podcast 4 years ago, I freely admit that I didn't really realize it until I got a little bit into it, that there began to be this addiction to, I'd have a great conversation with someone or even an interesting conversation. Man, I want, how many, and I'm thinking like during the time I'm speaking with someone, how many people are going to see this? I mean, what are people? I mean, it's almost as if I couldn't really be here with you because I mean, and obviously I was enjoying what someone was saying or sharing with me and it was reaching me, but I was too busy already thinking in the future about what are people going to think when they hear this? I mean, how, is this really going to get, is this going to get people's attention? And I can tell you that just like within the last 6 months, have I got to a place where I realize I'm hoping that I've broken that addiction. And even if it was coming from a good place, I mean, I want people I mean, ultimately it's about honoring people and giving them a voice, allowing them to share their voice and their story and their journey. But I've also realized now it's kind of like I don't see anything else other than just you and me sitting here right now having this conversation and knowing and trusting that if anybody needs to see it, they will. But I realize there's nothing I can do, right? There's nothing that I can physically do. And so I think that's that addiction, that need to, somehow get it out there. And I want as many people to see it. And it's just, I don't know how we got to this point
it's
where, and I
beautiful.
don't know, maybe it's just all these tools.
It's like the more we remove ourselves from these polarities of perception, right and wrong, day and night, dark and light, this or that, like, and this victim savior consciousness that everyone like, oh, I'm suffering because of what they did, or this guy is going to save my life, or whatever. Like, as soon as we realize that the root of the duality that we perceive in the world is actually originating from within us, and you could say that from a greater perspective, it's between the soul's inability or unwillingness to acknowledge, the ego's inability or unwillingness to acknowledge this greater animating principle, the soul, right? But at a more even basic level that might hit home for more people, it's simply just discord between the heart and mind. And the more we, as these beings that we temporarily are, the more we just stop investing our attention into all of these external things and in all these stories and in all this stuff, and we take that attention back, right? We just take it back and we just start breathing and we smile and we just do it. A lot of people would think, they're like, wow, that's so boring. And it's like, well, only at first, but you keep doing that like an addict, right? You're reversing the addictive proclivity, which is like focusing on everybody and everything around you, and that enhancing, people trigger your wounds and then you get sucked into this cycle of that. But when you just are like, I'm just going to stop doing all that. I'm going to breathe very calm. I'm going to relax my body, and I'm just going to keep doing that. Just as there is infinite outer space that we could explore by all these external means, even more so, there is infinite internal space. And in the beginning, it takes this reprioritization of values, this recommitting of where we're investing our attention. Instead of investing our attention into all these things that we think we need to do to make money to pay the bills, if we start taking some of that energy and reinvesting it into this priceless, limitless, animating energy that is the true gift, that is truly what we're looking for, were we to break free of all these external addictions, we would find that as a result of doing that, the things that we need would be provided for us. And we would find that within each one of us, are these glands that are all through our body that when we're calm enough and we're breathing enough and we are consciously acknowledging that some greater force is causing our heart to beat and it's causing us to breathe. Literally, it is causing our lungs to breathe, whether we're conscious or not. This great living consciousness is causing us to be. When we start to become conscious of that in our quote unquote normal waking state and keep giving our attention to that, then we're able to realize that this body, through all these glands and organs, are much like stargates that allow us to explore the depths, the indescribable, the unimaginable, invisible, non-physical, non-local phenomenon of the source of consciousness as it animates our entire being and as it animates the physical living universe. And to interact with yourself and with life around you from that place is so much more rewarding and fulfilling than any money, than any car, than any house, than even any relationship that we think we want from a separatist perspective, which is really what this whole socially engineered consumeristic kind of mentality does. It makes us feel like we're separate. But when we've created this kind of relationship with this great living being that is animating our autonomic nervous system and is way more intelligent than I am, but when I start to cultivate this internal relationship with it, it's like, oh my dear, like here you are, like I've been waiting for you, like, and I'm like, the little kid part of you, the ego, the part of you that was resisting it. You're like, like really, you're there, you're actually here, you're paying attention to me. It's like, yes, yes, like I've always been paying attention to you, but you have been focused. You've been taking this beautiful attention that I've given to you and you've believed all the stories that everybody's told you.
Oh man, yeah, yeah,
And so I was like, oh, wait a minute. Wow, okay, there's an addiction, right?
yeah. Oh man, yeah, yeah.
But I just kept following that back. I kept going back. I'm like, okay, I'm listening, I'm giving attention to all these stories and this idea that I gotta struggle and work and toil and stress out to make money and that all that, like, okay, but what is the root cause of that? Right? Is it my parents telling me I need to work hard? Is it society telling me? Is it like it comes down to even deeper than that? It's essentially pattern recognition. It's in what we were saying before, like the five senses that everybody thinks are their primary human senses, right? Like touch, taste, sound, whatever they are. Like everybody's so focused on what we think it means to be human that we have all but forgotten this greater evolutionary impulse of the soul of this living consciousness that is really trying to help us understand what our humanity is. Because the humanity that everybody is stressed out and addicted to living and destroying the planet and at war with each other and all, I, like, come on, right? Like, come on, you guys. Like, time for something new here. Like, I don't care for that because I love this relationship that I have intentionally cultivated to, even though at first I was like, I don't even, what is there? I don't even know what I'm doing. But it just made sense. I'm like, okay, something's causing my heart to beat. Something's causing my lungs to breathe. It's obviously way more intelligent than I am because I'm not doing that. I can affect it, but it's doing it whether I'm aware of it or not. So I was like, doesn't it just make sense that I'm giving my attention to all these things in the world around me and they're causing me tremendous stress, right? And it keeps being reflected back to me through my relationships or my businesses or things that seem like they're going to work and then they don't. And I'm like, okay, why don't I just start giving more attention to whatever is happening inside and make that the new addiction, the new, the new focus. I
Yeah.
essentially reverse engineered the addictive personality and decided to take all of my personal addictions and focus on the non-personal, you could say, aspects of this animating principle that is allowing me to exist. And I know it's allowing me to exist because at some point I'm going to hit a wall and die, and then whatever this is going to be front and center. So
Yeah. Yeah.
why would I not be giving it the attention that it deserves and that I deserve, and frankly, that you deserve, and that we all deserve? Why would we not give it this kind of attention now? So that's breaking addiction 101 right there.
Man, that is so powerful. And I was going to even ask you, I know we were talking a little bit before we started the recording, just about the addiction to fear and the need to know, being informed. And so I didn't know if there's anything that you might speak to on that. Is that, I wonder in some ways, is that just another way? I don't know. I guess everyone has their reasons for doing those things, but it'd be very interesting to hear anything that you would share about that, just in terms of the, needing to know everything. What's going on in the world, needing to have some idea, knowing the truth. We've got to know the truth. We've got to know what's happening. Yeah.
So knowing is like climbing a mountain range with many plateaus and peaks, and like as you're like okay, there's the top of the mountain. I'm gonna climb. I'm gonna go, and then you get to the top, and you're like, oh shit, that was only the peak I could see. There's all kinds of other peaks ahead of it, and so this type of knowing is very much like that, even from a greater perspective. Like when you have made the decision that you are going to shed everything that you think you know from a human perspective, from a socially engineered, societally influenced, conditioned perspective, which is essentially, as I was saying before, this addiction to pattern recognition, right? Even the language that we're speaking, the words we use, the images, we ascribe meaning to things that really, do they really mean what we're ascribing meaning to? Or do they just mean that because we think they do? And
Yeah.
oftentimes, like when you really look at that from this expansive perspective, instead of this like focused perspective that everybody, this tunnel vision that everybody's in, when you allow yourself to just like be open to looking at your own self-perceptive patterns and beliefs and ideas, you realize that they're not really yours. A lot of it was influenced by others, and then so you're like, why would I go through my life carrying all that baggage when it was never mine to begin with? And so that leads to like, at first you can have these like little mini crises, which are beautiful because they're essentially, you're like, what is real? Like, what is this real? Like, you start going through these things, and the part of you that thinks it knows who you are and what this is starts getting these like, oh really? Boom. And you're like, okay, red is only red because I think it's red, and like you're only this person because I'm perceiving. You literally start to break free of all this stuff, and you realize that none of that stuff is really that important compared to the energy that is allowing you to perceive all of this stuff in the first place. And so when you start to back, go backwards, backtrace, get closer to the root of what is causing you to perceive reality in the first place, you realize that there's this non-local phenomenon of energy that is animating your being. But because of all this conditioning, we're all focused in this little tiny sliver of what appears to be happening. But when you break out of that, you realize that your awareness is all through your body. It's all around your body. And that you actually don't even really have a body compared to this energy that's animating it. And when that starts to happen, when you start to become conscious of this energy you truly are, by creating a relationship with it, by getting with it, you realize you don't know anything, or you know very little, but this intuitive sense, this sixth sense they call it, starts to come online, you could say, to use some technology things, and it becomes more like a first sense. And you start to just feel love and empathy and appreciation and gratitude. And those are only the beginning of what you feel. What you really feel is like this deep stillness, this deep sense of like, wow, I am no one. And what everything that I've been focusing on is nothing. It is merely a shadow of a much greater, invisible, non physical energy form. People call it spiritual, like it's God, it's Jesus, it's Buddha, it's Allah, it's whatever name you want. Like it's all of that and it's none of that. It's greater than anything than any of us have the ability to perceive or believe in. But when we trust that it is alive and well inside of us, and we keep surrendering who we think we are over to it, it comes online and it starts influencing who we are. And then suddenly, who we are isn't this fearful, addicted person that's looking for other people to give us information and stories and beliefs. We realize that we are the source of this new form of information that can be birthed through us. And we know that it is real and we can trust it because when you've broken free of enough of your own quote unquote demons, you feel the coherence or the greater supporting frequency of what reality actually is, of what's allowing all of this to exist. And that's very humbling. And you don't fear the way you do. You trust. And then when people say, "Oh, but you got to believe in this," or you don't, you just are like, it's okay. You don't get triggered by that stuff anymore because you realize they are part of a process that is perfect for where they're at, and that actually they're not. And people really get triggered by this one, but what if they're not really even there? What if everybody and everything that we're perceiving around us is really just us perceiving something that is teaching us to become aware of a greater evolutionary impulse or a soul cycle, you could say, that is attempting to become conscious through us? A lot of people get triggered by the possibility of that because if that's what's happening, that means we have to take full responsibility as these individual beings to for who we are, for our state of being, for what we allow to knock us off balance or not. And a lot of people get
Man,
scared by
yeah.
that.
I wonder, is that the new frontier? That whole thing about that taking responsibility. I know that word empowerment has been around for a long time, and I know that there, in the various spiritual communities, there's a lot of talk, about ascension and us going into this higher level of consciousness. Do you think, in some ways, that this is part, what you've been speaking of is really what this is on, on this level? In other words, within the body, within this being.
Yeah, it's more like there's a higher level of consciousness that's always been there. However, our attention as these beings that we are has just been so refocused on all of these other things that are perfect. They're perfect. They're exactly what we needed to. But now we're realizing that there is something greater that's already there. And the beautiful thing about it is like, okay, this greater expansive awareness exists in and around everybody and everything. But the more we start giving our attention to it, what I've noticed in my own awareness is that this beautiful thing, you could say, happens when I, with my ego, with who I am, when Seth realizes that there's this greater energy causing his heart to beat. And when I start focusing on that, then I become aware of the innate intelligence, you could say, the frequency of energy that is causing my heart to beat. And because my ego, my who I think I am, is acknowledging that this greater force is in me, but also not separate from me, it creates an amplification of its presence within me, allowing me to shed some of these traumas and things, this baggage that I was carrying with me, and suddenly new possibilities, new frontiers start to come into focus that weren't there before. It's not that they weren't there, we just weren't able to see them because we were focused on everything. So, in this way, when we give attention to this, and it might sound boring at first, but when we give attention to this internal force that is with us, that is gifting us the opportunity to exist, then it gives us something back, which is like this co-creative capacity to be creative, to envision in alignment with its greater frequency, causing us to rise above our own self-imposed and societally imposed limitations. And so, and I'm going to stop in a second, and then so all these stories, like the spiritual community right now, you could say, right? Like so many people are so like into this doom and gloom and like, oh my God, and like, why? Like, why? I mean, okay, if that's how you feel, great, allow yourself to feel it. Like, but we are like, we're surrounded by an ocean of infinity. Like, we're literally surrounded by an ocean of stars in this physical universe. Why limit yourself to any belief or any means of identification with what we think things are? Because that's like saying, okay, I've made it to the top of the mountain, that's it. There's nowhere else to go. Well, okay, even if
Yeah.
you did make it to the top of the mountain, who's to say you can't grow wings and start like and fly off? Like, who's to say? Oh, you're going to let somebody tell you you can't do that? That's you giving your consent, your free will to somebody or something that is oppressing you and holding power over you. And that's on you. You can do that if you want, but I'm not going to do that. You know?
I love it. And I was going to almost ask you what's coming up intuitively. This may actually be a question, or it may just be just a reflection of what you've been sharing. The question that's coming up for me is, how do we heal the world and ourselves from the inside out? And I don't know if that is just I don't know necessarily if that's a question, but it just seems, or maybe it's a rhetorical question. But I mean, I really am getting that sense that this is really from the inside out in a way that maybe it never, the intensity of this we're in a place where it never has been this intense and this urgent before. Maybe, I don't know.
It's so beautiful. It's a beautiful rhetorical question. I mean, it's really essentially what I did is I reverse engineered the world, right? And what I mean by that is I reversed the world. I turned everything inside out instead of outside in. Like, we're so used to perceiving things from the outside in. The bulk of our attention, almost all of our attention, is focused on external things that influence our internal state of being. So most of why we got so sick and traumatized and messed up and hurt, and why we embody all these belief systems that were never really ours to begin with, is because of that. We've been in this pattern of perceiving everything from the outside in. And so I realized that. And I realized it very clearly. And I was like, what would happen if I stopped doing that and traded it in for perceiving reality from the inside out? And I was like, I could immediately feel like, oh. And I was like, oh my God, that feels great. But then all of a sudden, things would come up and triggers and all that. And I was like, oh, wait a minute. Okay, all these triggers and things are the things that I keep giving my attention to that are preventing me from feeling that, like, ah. So I kept bringing myself internally. I kept perceiving everything from the inside out. And really, I just kept relaxing in the face of all the things that were triggering me and that were causing me pain. And that looked like, from an internal perspective, I was very sick. I had a lot of, physical illness. I had a lot of emotional illness. For those who don't know, it's a miracle I'm alive. I've been through hell and back a million times. Like, it's a miracle I'm living and breathing, the things that I went through. However, I was able to overcome these things by being like, okay, is it really that bad? Or is it just my reaction to it that's making it seem like it's so bad? What if I trust that this 10,000-eyed monster that wants to tear me apart and stick me in a prison and has guns to my head and wants to ruin my life, what if I trust in this internal power that is animating my being to face these things without fear, to face them as like, okay, I don't like it, but somehow, some way, I trust that this is exactly what I need to become aware of. And I don't know how or why, and I know that this, I've been arrested, I've had tons of people put guns to my head, and like many near-death experiences, both from people trying to kill me and from me overdosing on drugs, from me being in car accidents, many different types of this. And it's always the surrender to this calm force, that this bioelectromagnetic force that is in every single one of us, that is the predominant aspect of what allows all of us to live. And I just kept focusing on that. And every time anything distracted me from it, I was like, oh, it's just teaching me to focus on this more. And so I just kept doing it over and over and over. And like any habit, I just started getting better and better at it. And I started trusting more and more. And I realized that all the people or the things that were seeking to inflict harm on me weren't actually really trying to do that. That was just me afraid of them doing that and witnessing it from this place of reactivity and torture and victimization, right? And so
Yeah.
I
Oh
kept
man.
consenting, I kept giving this beautiful internal alignment of heart, brain, whole body, whole soul coherence that every single one of us has the capability of living with. I kept giving that away to the Illuminati, to the Matrix, to all the things that everybody's so afraid of. I kept consenting and giving this beautiful energy that is letting me live. I kept giving it to all of that when I could have just been breathing and relaxing and trusting. Even if they were like, we're going to frickin' cut you to pieces, if I just trust this enough, they can do whatever they want. They are not going to take this state of being from me, because this state of being is eternal. It is what is truly happening. And I'll tell you what, I have been so blessed to be able to embody this state of being in situations where people were trying to hurt me, where they were trying to do harm. And I've watched this disarm them, not knowing that was going to happen. I didn't go into it like, oh, I'm going to be this enlightened being. And no, it had nothing to do that. There was no thought. There wasn't anything. There was just this awareness that this internal state of coherence is so beautiful and so profound. And I can feel it connected to everything. And my intuition has come back online to the degree that I know that that is the predominant reality of of what I truly am, and that who I am is merely only an extension of that. And because I was able to live in harmony with that and habituate it, just like everybody can do,
Yeah.
I've been in situations, many, many, many situations, where the oppressors, those who were trying to cause harm, where normally people would consent and be like, no, no, don't do it. But because I just held that and stayed in that place, they stopped. They literally stopped. And they don't even know what hit them. And in that way, that's what I was talking about, that post you read. Like, because everything that's happening right now, everybody wants to fight, right? They want to pick up sticks and stones. They want to kill and they want to fight. Like, okay, obviously, if somebody feels like they need to do that, that may be part of their own baggage of karmic repercussions and consequences that they're working through. But the ultimate reality is, if we're truly here to evolve into this greater expansive awareness that we are, that we truly are, no matter what, no matter who we think we are, no matter how big our egos seem to be, We're nothing. Okay, I am nothing. My life is about this. Sorry, my ego is about it. It doesn't exist. Yours
Yeah.
doesn't
Yeah.
exist. There isn't anybody on this planet whose ego is so worthy that they can not live in a state of coherence with reality. Now, the other side of that is when we allow this greater force that's already there to be freed within us by us just going in and setting it free, right? Because that's where the real prison is. It's not in the world around us. Everything that's happening in the world around us is a reflection of what's happening in us. But when we go inside and when we just get into this state of calm and relaxation and we breathe and we trust and we're in a state of love, then we find that this energy that we truly are suddenly starts to come out. And it's not incarcerated right here in our ego, in our prefrontal cortex that everybody's addicted to. It's around us. And suddenly we're like, oh my God, I'm like an antenna for it. And your ego is like, your ego eventually starts to become really influenced by it because it's like, oh, it feels way better than being stressed out and worried about dying all the time, which
Oh
you're going to
yeah.
do anyway. So why not die now and find out that you don't actually ever really die?
Oh man. Yeah. 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 I'm feeling that one right here, man. That's like that is hitting me where I live. I love that. I love that. And I get the sense too. Is some of this possibly too just the addiction to thinking, or the addiction to thinking that our mind is always where we're going to be focused.
It's addiction to thinking without the rest of the coherence of the body influencing the thought process. That's
Yeah.
really what it is. Because thinking in and of itself is a beautiful thing when it is in balance with the rest of the systems and energies of the body. The issue is, like you said, people have become addicted to thinking in a way that is uh, lacks coherence with the heart and all these other centers of our being. And so we start focusing on making things that aren't even really there into reality. And does it feel good to you? It doesn't feel good to me when I do that.
Oh no, man. It's yeah. I'm wondering too. Do you feel like in some ways power? We're going to start to see power. We used to. At least for me, I always thought I saw. Power was external. Do you think in some ways we're going into an era when possibly, if people want to, that the power actually becomes internal?
Yeah, I mean, it's always been. I think at
Yeah.
the moment of death, everybody finds out that that's where it's always been. And, in my own experience, I've had a few that were really, really profound, both in a car accident and another time through this initiatory process that I went through, where in the moments as this energy that is animating the body left the body and became integrated into where it actually came from, the human memory was still present of like, oh my God, I forgot all of this. I didn't, and how could I have forgotten that, And so why wait to die to find out, Why wait? All the money, all the houses, all the cars, all those things, nothing wrong with any of it, but they don't mean anything when that is what really means something. So why wouldn't we empower ourselves now? Why wouldn't we live from a state of, why wouldn't we give attention to this and start relaxing, especially now? Especially, I mean, I couldn't think of a better time than now to be calm, to be loving in the face of all that's happening, right? I mean, I see so many people just getting carried away down the rabbit hole of everything they think is happening. And while it absolutely may be the case that some of those things are happening, and like we don't actually know anything that's really happening, because the reality is we don't I don't know anybody who's aware of what's happening within them. I don't know one person who is so in tune with this animating principle that they are super conscious of how it functions within the autonomic nervous system of their body and empowers them to. Nobody. I don't know anybody. And much less look up into the sky at night and like, what's really happening here? Okay?
Yeah, yeah.
And what kind of power do we, as these little helpless beings that we have allowed ourselves to think we are, what kind of access to power and healing and health do we really have if we break this addiction to identifying with all these things that everybody else has normalized identifying with?
Yeah, man, I tell you what, Seth, my goodness, I'm just sitting here just basically, and at this point, I feel like there's nothing going on here. It's all feels like it's going on here. Yeah.
We could do that. I know you said you have an hour. Maybe we could close out with like kind of a slight guided meditation thing if you want,
Oh, I love that, man. Absolutely.
so
Absolutely, man.
people can be aware of it, because we talk a lot about stuff, right? And
Yeah.
so the reality is this is, and for everybody listening, we, Jeff and I, are attempting to give meaning to something that is beyond human comprehension according to the way most of us have been used to using it. And so when we realize that, the very mode by which we're creating these words that we're speaking is actually vibratory. So when we stop focusing on what the words mean and how our minds process them, and we become aware of the energy that is creating the sounds, and we realize that we each do this within ourselves. Everybody has their own sound, and that, coming back to the Om and all that, you realize that your sound, your energy is really what heals you, then you can focus on that. And I'm speaking in a slower, calm, kind of more of a coherent place, because it's really just about letting go of everything we think we know, including everything I'm saying, and just breathing rhythmically in and out, smiling from your heart. You don't even need to think about what that means. You just got to do it. Smile in your heart and realize that this big, beautiful brain that you've been in for so long and focused so much of your attention out into the world through also has the ability to become aware of all these other plexuses and areas of perception that are internal inside of your body. Every single gland in your body has neural networks in it. It has plexuses. It has all of these neuronal impulses that you can become conscious of in a very different way than the way that you're most used to being conscious of. And when you choose to start giving your attention to these internal parts of your body by focusing, learn physiology and anatomy, learn where all the glands in your body are, and take your attention and just start dropping it. Okay, like right now you're in your head, drop it into your throat, and literally just imagine what it would be like to perceive reality through your throat. I know it sounds crazy, but you can. And once you're in that, you can imagine what it's like to be able to speak clearly, to be able to articulate your inner truth, your purpose. You can perceive things in a way that are so far beyond the way you're most used to perceiving. You can drop into your heart. And your heart actually has thousands and thousands and thousands of neural networks all through them. Your heart is a conscious organ. it's not just pumping blood through your body. It is a living thing. It is structuring, it's vortexing the blood all through your body. It's giving it frequency and meaning and structure in a way that you can become conscious of by just bringing your consciousness to that part of your body and allowing yourself to just be aware of it. Keep breathing. Keep breathing rhythmically. Keep smiling. And then we're going to just drop into one last place. Just right into the gut, about 2 inches below the belly button. Just drop right into the gut. And what I mean by that is take your consciousness that's up in your head and let it just sink. Boom. If you can. If you can't, it's okay. It doesn't matter. But if you can, just let it sink right into your gut, almost like you're seeing or hearing or feeling or whatever through your gut. Because you can. Because you have the ability to do that. And if you think that's crazy, or if you allow somebody to make you think that's crazy, that's your choice. But you can make a different choice, and you can choose to become aware of this internal energy that is working so hard for you. All these organs in your body are your best friends. They are your family. They are giving you more love than anybody or anything ever could. And to the degree that you are willing to show them, to reciprocate that show of love with your attention, by realizing how hard all of these organs and glands and everything are working for you, then they start to love you even more. And suddenly you start creating this internal love affair within yourself that you don't second guess that. Once you really start connecting to it and feeling it, because it's there anyway. But when you consciously become aware of it and you start attuning yourself to it, you start becoming in love with what life has truly given you. This miraculous body that is animated by this miraculous invisible force. And when you, as this person who you temporarily think you are, starts becoming more and more conscious of these priceless gifts that are worth more than all the everything in the entire world, and you start to live with the conscious awareness of that from that place, and you can feel it reverberating throughout your entire body, then you start to shed all of the fears. You become aware of places in your body where you're holding pain, you're holding trauma, and those just start to go away on their own because you are choosing to redirect your attention internally to where it's all really happening. Your consciousness is being projected from inside of you out into the world. So if you take that and you turn it back in, then you get upgraded in a way that only you as an individual can become aware of if you commit to doing this. This is what, quote unquote, they call spiritual practice. This is what it means to be a devotee. And to deepen into the layers and levels of this type of internal awareness is to lead through these breakthroughs that some would refer to as initiations. And it's kind of like we were saying before, it's like these new peaks and valleys that show you what's possible. And when you break through and you become aware of them, you don't feel the need to march forward in a way where you want to get more and more and more. You're just so grateful that you have the opportunity to do any of it at all, that you're able to just settle even deeper into the peace and wholeness that you feel. And it is in doing that this intuitive extrasensory perception starts to expand naturally on its own in a way that will prepare you for greater climbs up the mountains of your own soul's evolutionary impulse. So there's that.
Wow, man. Oh man, in fact, I was going to say it's almost like there's no words. Yeah, man. Yes. This one of the things I was going to say I love talking to you because of the fact that I feel that it is because I feel like in a lot of ways there's no me and there's no you. You know, we're just here. Yeah.
And that's the beautiful thing about it. Just to as a young child, and anybody, I just was so aware that this was there. It's in all of us. There's nothing else but this. And the more I focus on it now, whenever, the more anybody focuses on it, suddenly words, beliefs, ideas, perceptions, all these things fade. Your memory fades, everything fades, but not in a way that, and you just start expanding. See, to tie this all in is we've become addicted to a convergent focus. We've become addicted to focusing on the external things around us, and we've taken all of this beautiful energy that's in us and we've siphoned it into this little narrow thing. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, but there's this, it's almost like that's the 1%, and there's this 99% that is called a divergent focus, you could say, that if we start practicing expanding into that and really, really make that the bulk of our awareness, even though the world tells us we have to do all these stressful things, the more we do this, the better we get at it, the more we're able to bring that type of energy to all the things that stress us out. And even more beautifully, the more we're then able to take this expansive state of being that is a living geometric field in alignment with the greater coherent forces of energy that causing all of this to exist. And then we can narrow our focus in a way that's healthy and balanced and supported by it. And that's the beauty of it.
Man, I feel like that's the next frontier, brother. I really do. I mean, I feel like that's where we're headed if we choose. And I want to choose. I choose. You know, I want to choose. Yeah, man.
I know it gets to a point where there's nothing to say anymore.
And I wonder if in some ways too, I mean, I know for me, it's like I lived in fear for that for so long, man. I lived in fear for that. It was just, yeah, to somebody who, I would always kind of talk to kind of keep it going. And I just, yeah, man, just to not be afraid to get there, right? To not be afraid to arrive there and just embrace it fully, right?
Comes back to that thing that you were saying before about people feeling alone, right? A
Yeah,
lot of the reason
yeah.
why people, if they think they feel alone, they want other people, but the real reason, if they start going through the layers of their own perception, is they're afraid of themselves. They're afraid of what they really are. They don't want.
Oh, yeah.
I think Carl Jung or somebody said people would rather do anything than face their soul.
Man, yeah, I spent most of my life doing that too. I freely admit it. I freely admit it because I didn't know what else to do. I did, yeah,
Well, the
yeah,
world teaches us that, and we consent to it. And that's why it keeps teaching us that. So when we choose to be the mature ones, the adults, and say, you know what, I'm going to break the cycle. I'm no longer going to consent to the world teaching me or telling me what it's going to do because there's just no need to anymore. And you take responsibility for how you perceive it, and you get into an aligned, coherent state of being, then reality, life, love, the universe, God, whatever, it starts to teach you through you.
Man, wow. Yeah. What I was going to say too, what I love is like, coming into today, there was like, I didn't even need to know, I just trusted. I knew we were going to be here grooving, so to speak, just being here in presence. And, yeah, I totally trusted. And I honor you, brother. I really do, for sharing all this and for being here. Yeah.
Likewise, and yes, I know. Is there anything you want to say or share or at all? I mean, I know I have a way, like when I go into it, it just starts going, but from this place of feeling that you're aware of right now, that is beyond thought, beyond words, is there anything that comes to mind? Mm.
I appreciate it, brother. I was going to say the one thing that is coming through is I feel like that it can be this all to me feels like that this is, to me, I know that it's so easy to complicate spirituality, and I know it's so easy, and I realize there's a lot of ways that people are developing that spiritual life and that connection. But after sitting here with you today and hearing this, I'm realizing that we can make it harder than it needs to be. But I also realize what's so nourishing for me is hearing you speak about how, and I realize it is work, right? I know I have to take responsibility, and I have to want to do this, and I have to be willing to do the work and the practice. But I'm also feeling like it's also much more simple than I thought it was too, that I have the ability to do it, and it doesn't have to be work. It's kind of like a paradox. It's both all at the same time. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for saying
Yeah.
that, because that's gold, what you just said, for a lot of people. And that simplicity really just comes out of, as we've been saying all the time, like just choosing to redirect the flow of your attention. Instead of all
Man.
the problems and everything external, you're just choosing to redirect it internally. Even if at first you think it's boring or you're not getting any results, just keep doing it. Keep going.
Yeah.
And eventually you do. Eventually you get feedback. And when you get that aha thing,
That's where it's at, right? That's where it's at. Oh man. Absolutely. Thank you so much. It has been so, I was going to say, this is just, man, this is what it's all about, I feel like. And I'm just so appreciative that you've taken this time. Man, I honor your journey, and I honor everything you shared today.
thank you. I appreciate it, Jeff. Really. Thank you so much. And for what it's worth, like, every time we meet, it'll be different.
Oh, that's what I love about it too. And I mean, I definitely intuit that this conversation will continue in different ways, as long as you want to do that. And I'm just open to not even needing to know today. No, not even knowing what the next conversation will be, just trusting it. You know.
All right. Okay. Thank you. I,
Much love. Thank you so much, brother. It's been great. Thank you.
See you soon.
Take care. We'll see you. Okay. Bye bye.